morning, everyone.
Good morning.
And happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.
Please rise in body and spirit and join me in singing our first song. Now, you know this one. You might know it as If You're Happy and You Know It, clap your hands. But we've got some different words. So pay attention and follow myself and Mother Teresa. If you're silly and you know it, laugh out loud. If you're silly and you know it, laugh out loud. Ha ha ha. If you're silly and you know it, laugh out loud. Ha ha ha. If you're silly and you know it, then your face will surely show it. If you're silly and you know it, laugh out loud. Ha ha ha. If you're scary and you know it, stomp and scream. If you're scary and you know it, stomp and scream. If you're scary and you know it, stomp and scream. If you're scary and you know it, then your face will surely show it. If you're scary and you know it, stomp and scream. If you're spooky and you know it, be still. If you're spooky and you know it, be still. If you're spooky and you know it, be still. If you're spooky and you know it, then your face will surely show it. If you're spooky and you know it, be still. If you're scared and you know it, tell a friend. If you're scared and you know it, tell a friend, I'm scared. If you're scared and you know it, tell a friend, I'm scared. If you're scared and you know it, then your face will surely show it. If you're scared and you know it, tell a friend, I'm scared. We have one more verse. If you've made your pledge already, say hooray. If you've made your pledge already, shout hooray, hooray. If you've made your pledge already, say hooray, hooray. If you've made your pledge already, then your face will surely show it. If you've made your pledge already, say hooray, hooray. Yay.
Yay. Have a seat.
Good morning, and welcome to UUAA for this all-ages-included, multi-generational Halloween service. Whether you're with us in person, live streaming from home right now, or watching on demand at a later time, I'd like to thank you for being here with us. Your presence is felt and treasured. My name is Eli Kranz. My pronouns are he, him, his. I am a member of the Lay Worship Leaders Program here at UUAA, and it is my pleasure to welcome you all here today. Joining us in today's service are Reverend Manish Mishra-Marzetti, our senior minister, Reverend Cassandra Hartley, our minister for community life, Reverend Mother Theresa Rohlck, our minister for Pastoral Care, Stella Anderson, our director of spiritual growth and development, Deb Markum, UUAA's new administrator, Allison Halerz, our Pianist-in-Residence, Mike Halerz, our technological consultant, and members of YRUU, our high school-aged youth group. If you're new to this community, we'd love to get to know you. For those attending in person today, please visit the Jackson Chapel, just out those doors and down the hall, for our newcomers' welcome following the conclusion of today's service. It's an excellent place to get to know a few members, and ask questions about Unitarian Universalism, and ask questions about our congregation more specifically. If you're currently joining us by live stream, we invite you to please introduce yourself in the chat so that other members and friends can greet you and welcome you. And for those watching us at a later time, we invite you to please fill out our newcomer survey at uuaa.org. This will help us learn more about you and help us stay in touch. Everyone was a newcomer at one time. I remember my first time here. I slipped in the back and I slipped right back out until finally I gave in and I went to the newcomers' welcome after services. I still have the folder that I received there with all kinds of information about Unitarian Universalism and our congregation. That folder is a reminder that I allowed myself to be seen and And I was reminded of that when Reverend Manish said I could wear a costume today. Part of me was horrified at the idea. To not only come up here visible to everyone, but then to be silly and wear a costume. To have fun at church. But then I recalled that folder, a simple blue folder with just a few pamphlets inside. It wasn't the contents of the folder that ultimately mattered the most, but the experience I had at the newcomer meeting. There was a warmth that I still carry with me, a presence. It allowed me to feel that our community is a place of friendship, safety, and comfort. I will always be a little fearful being seen, I think. To be vulnerable with people that I don't know and people that I do. But because of the support, love, and welcome of this community, I have gone from slipping in the back, unseen, to and singing in the choir, and volunteering, and participating. We are a community that sees your fears, your worries, and takes you by the hand. It is not only safe to weep here, but also giggle, to meditate, and to sing. As we continue deepening our time together this morning, I'd like to bring your attention to two announcements. First, next Sunday, November 6th, is the time change. Please remember to fall back and adjust your clocks accordingly. In addition, next Sunday is also our annual Sunday of Remembrance and of honoring all souls, honoring those who have died but are still with us in our hearts. You are invited to bring a memento or photograph to share on our memory altar, which we will construct together on Sunday. And now I invite you to move to find a place of centering and grounding in your hearts as we move more deeply into this time together. We are gathered for worship.
Good morning. One of the totally rad ways that we come together each week is by lighting our chalice. Our chalice is a reminder of the ways that we're connected to one another, to Unitarian Universalists all over the world, and to our living tradition. So to help us light our chalice this morning, I'd like to invite forward any kids who want to help who are in grades kindergarten through third grade. So if you're kindergarten through third grade and you want to come up and help light the chalice, we could use some help up here. All right, as they send the flame forward, please join me in saying our chalice lighting words and hoping that costumes are not too flammable. Together, let us say, we light this chalice for the light of truth. We light this chalice for the warmth of love. We light this chalice for the energy of action. We light this chalice for the harmony of peace. Another way that we come together each week is by saying the words of our covenant. As Unitarian Universalists, we are not bound together by one single common belief, but by our covenant, which is a set of promises about how we will be together in community. So whether you have these words memorized or whether you're saying them for the first time, please join me in saying, the spirit of this church is love, and service is its law. This is our covenant with each other, to dwell together in peace, to search for truth in love, and to help one another. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Deb Markum, and my pronouns are she, her. I am a Unitarian Universalist and a career congregational administrator. I joined our UUAA community in August after serving a Unitarian Universalist congregation in the Kansas City area for 17 years. Last spring, over an early morning cup of Earl Grey, I was catching up on some communications between UU administrators and our professional organization when I came upon a job posting for the administrator position here in Ann Arbor. Now, you may not know this, but the First UU congregation of Ann Arbor is well known in UU circles. UUAA has over and over again demonstrated to the wider UU world how to do community well and how to adapt and respond to the urgencies of our times. UUAA is known as a congregation to follow. I had lived in the Kansas City area since I was 5 years old. My wife and I were established in the community where we had friends and family and a lifetime of cultivated community and support. We had raised our 3 daughters, now ages 18, 19, and 21 there. And they had navigated their coming of age during COVID times, when there was still a lot of uncertainty around how they would launch into adulthood. I wasn't looking for another job. I wasn't looking for an opportunity to start over again a long way from home. Still, I read the job posting because of what I knew about this congregation. If anything, I was curious how UUAA had responded to the pandemic. I wanted to know who was leading the congregation and what work they were engaged in. I wanted to read the community's mission and vision. And that final point is where I paused. I brewed a second cup of tea that morning, and I may have been just a little bit late for work. The quality of the work this community has done on Vision 2050 and in identifying the congregation's priority areas was and continues to be impressive. If I were asked to name 3 priority areas that I think are most necessary as a lens for addressing the gravity of our times, they would be radical welcome, anti-oppression, anti-racism, and climate justice. These are the concerns of my daughters and their friends as they transition to adulthood. What is the future of our planet? How is there still so much hate and fear in the 21st century? And why is it so hard to dismantle the systems of oppression that are pervasive in our culture? The more I read about UUAA, the more I felt an irresistible pull. I was concerned about how my family would react to the possibility of such a big change, but there was no question in their minds. As a family, we felt we could make the necessary changes in order to be a part of a community that was doing exactly the work that we believed was needed right now. And so I applied to be your administrator, and here we are now, together in community. In support of all the beautiful things that this community aspires to be, I invite you to make a pledge to the Lift Up Stewardship Campaign, UUA's annual fundraising drive. We know it will take the commitment of each member and friend in our community to help sustain the critical work that we are doing. It is work that we know we can't accomplish alone, but we know we can contribute our passion to this community and that our collective commitment has the potential to impact the world. The members and friends of UUAA lift up each other. UUA lifts up the larger Washtenaw County community and beyond. And UUA lifts up other congregations and kindred organizations who share our vision for the future. For those among us who are new to congregational finances, a pledge is not a binding legal commitment. It is our best guess of what we may be able to contribute in the coming calendar year. Pledges are extremely important because they allow us to create a sustainable budget that supports the community's future. We base next year's budget on the financial commitments, the pledges that we are all making right now. If you haven't yet made a pledge to the 2023 Lift Up campaign, please do so today. Please consider what you or your family could financially contribute to UUAA in 2023. The Lift Up campaign asks each individual to consider contributing an additional $1 a day, $365 per member or friend in your household, in order to help UUAA maintain its current level of programming, staffing, and social justice efforts. In the face of inflation, insurance increases, and other cost pressures, this is the additional funding that UUAA needs to keep doing what we are doing today, to afford the staffing and programs that we have today. If you are new to UUAA, but already feel welcome and passionate about this community like I do, we invite you to make your first-time pledge to this congregation. Any and every financial commitment matters. If you did not receive a pledge packet in the mail, please stop by the table in the foyer as you leave today. If you've already made a pledge or made a multi-year commitment in a previous year and you'd like to change your pledge, simply send me a note at deb@uuaa.org. I'll be happy to help you. Finally, thank you for the gift of being in community together, for the love and the warm welcome that I have received in my short time here. I have never felt more certain that I am where I need to be, that I am among a community of souls who will help me become the best version of myself, who will lift me up so that together we may live boldly into our vision for 2050 and beyond.
Please rise in body and spirit for our next song. So this one, I'm going to teach this to you, but you're going to sing it on an ooh. So I need to hear your scariest ooh. Can I hear it? Oh, come on, you can be scarier than that. I know you can. All right, come on, one more time. Oh, there we go. Okay, so watch Mother Teresa and myself. I will teach, and then she will indicate when you're going to sing. All together now.
Good morning. What better day than Halloween for some storytelling? It's a day to pretend and to play and to perform, a day to put aside our worries and anxieties, to embrace fun and adventure, a day when it's safe to be afraid. As retired United Methodist pastor Steve Garnaas Holmes writes so beautifully, Halloween, a day when we get it right. Strangers come to us, beautiful, ugly, odd, or scary, And we accept them all without question, compliment them, treat them kindly, and give them good things. Why don't we live like that? Why indeed? Maybe we can. Our first story for all ages, A Tiger Called Thomas, written by Charlotte Zolotow and illustrated by Diana Kane Bluthenthal, and read by our very own YRUUer, Zach Hildebrandt.
A Tiger Called Thomas. Once there was a little boy named Thomas. He was very nice. But when he and his family moved to a new house on a new street, he took it into his head that the new people might not like him. So he never left his stoop. Why don't you play with that little girl, Marie? His mother asked him. Maybe she wouldn't like me, Thomas said. Of course she'd like you, his mother said. Why wouldn't she? But Thomas didn't answer. Why don't you visit the lady with the black cat down the street? His mother asked. They might not like me, Thomas said. Of course they like you. Why shouldn't they like you? Said his mother, but Thomas didn't go. Oh, Thomas, said his mother, everyone will like you. Why don't you go play? But Thomas shook his head and just down the steps, watching. The lady in the house across the street was always out in the yard, watering the plants, raking the leaves, sweeping the rock, picking the flowers. And all the while, Thomas sat on his stoop and watched. He watched the old man who came up the street with his big black poodle 3 times a day. The poodle always looked over its shoulder at Thomas, and its tail stood up like a small palm tree and wagged from side to side. But Thomas just sat on his steps and watched him pass. He watched the sparrows and the grackles and the blue jays in the trees. He watched the black cat look up at the sparrows and grackles and blue jays. But he never went up the stoop to play. At Halloween, his mother came home with a tiger costume for him. Try this on, she said. Thomas put on the orange and black striped suit with its quilted tail. He put on the mask with its long whiskers. How do I look? He asked his mother. Exactly like a tiger, she said. Thomas looked in the mirror, and his mother was right. No one will know who I am when I go trick-or-treating, he said. There was a large orange moon in the sky, and it was already getting dark when Thomas went out. The branches of the trees hardly showed, except where they raced across the moon. He crossed the street to the house of the lady who was always outside, because the chrysanthemums were still blooming in front of her house. Trick or treat, Thomas called when she came to the door. Well, hello, the lady said. She tossed a packet of orange candies into his bag. Happy Halloween. Thank you, answered the tiger. You're welcome, Thomas, the lady said, closing the door. Under his mask, Thomas blushed. That's funny, he said to himself. She called the tiger Thomas. At the next house, he rang the bell. Trick or treat, he called. Marie's mother opened the door. She had candy apples to the tree. Oh, thank you, the tiger said, for he especially liked candy apples. You're welcome, said Marie's mother. Marie is a witch tonight. Maybe you'll pass her. But anyway, come play hopscotch here tomorrow, Thomas. Thank you, Thomas said again. But when the door closed, he reached up to feel his mask. It was still on, covering his whole face. That's funny, he thought. She knew who I was too. He passed a tall ghost going up to the house as he wept. He couldn't see the ghost's face, but there was something very familiar about this figure. Hi, Thomas, said the ghost. Want to play horseshoes tomorrow? I got a new set. Sure, said Thomas, for the ghost was Gerald. Thomas could tell by the height. He went to the old man's house. The black poodle threw back his head and barked wildly when he saw the tiger at the door. But when he sniffed at the tiger's feet and sniffed at the tiger's quilted tail, he suddenly put up his own palm tree tail and wagged it hard. Trick or treat, the tiger said. The old man had made big pumpkin cookies. Fresh baked, Thomas, he said, winking as he dropped one in the bag. Best bang for tigers, he added, and winked again as he watched the tiger go down the steps. He called the tiger Thomas too, thought Thomas. Now he rang the bell at the house of the old lady and the black cat. Trick or treat, he called. Come in, the little old woman said. Her black cat looked curiously at the tiger, and the tiger reached out to stroke the cat's black slippery fur. He loves that, the little old lady laughed. Come play with him again, Thomas, she said. He gets lonely. So do I, said Thomas. She knew too, he thought to himself as he turned toward home. The orange moon was a little higher in the sky. The sky was a little blacker than before. He couldn't see any of the branches against it now. A group of ghosts and goblins was coming down the steps of the lady across the street, and a solitary but familiar-looking witch with a broom under her arm passed him. He looked at her curiously as he walked slowly toward the steps of his house. It was Marie. Hi, Thomas, called Marie. Thomas walked upstairs to his own room. He looked in the mirror at the tiger. The tiger in the mirror looked back at him, whiskers and all. Have a good time? Asked his mother. How do they know who I am? Thomas asked. Did they? Said his mother. Yes, Thomas said. The Macs didn't fool them a bit, and they all asked me to come back. I guess they all liked you, his mother said. Thomas looked at her. Suddenly, he felt wonderful. Oh, I like them too, he said. And when he took out the Macs, he was smiling. The end.
Thank you so much for reading, Zach. Have any of you ever felt like Thomas does at the beginning of the story? Lonely for connection, but afraid to take that first step? It's hard to be the new kid, or the new adult for that matter. Change is always scary, but big changes can be overwhelming. When I was in the 3rd grade, my family moved across town and I had to change schools in the middle of the year. I remember walking into my new classroom as all the kids turned in their desks to stare at me. I might as well have grown a second head or worn a witch costume like this one, the way they were looking at me. It was a record scratch moment. Time kind of stood still. What do you think was going on in my body at that moment? My heart was beating fast. My hands felt all sweaty and clammy. It was hard to breathe. I was terrified. My spiraling mind was drowning in scary thoughts. What if no one likes me? What if I don't make any friends? What if I spend every day alone? I felt just like Thomas. So there I was, in a room full of strangers, not sure where to look, wondering what to do next. I could have just put my head down, isolated myself, not talked to anyone, just stayed in my safe but lonely little bubble, watching the world pass me by, just like Thomas on his stoop. That's definitely a foolproof way to avoid getting hurt. Because if you don't get attached to anyone, you can't get hurt, right? Isn't that our greatest fear? That if we allow ourselves to love, we risk getting our hearts broken? Who here understands that fear? Have you experienced that feeling before? Maybe even in this building. Thomas is all of us, longing for connection, afraid of rejection, nervously watching the world go by from the sidelines and trying desperately to find the courage to reach out. Thomas does find that strength to leave his front porch, doesn't he? On Halloween night, he musters the courage to put on that tiger costume and transform. What is it about putting on that costume that makes it possible for Thomas to overcome his fears? Is it the costume that makes him brave? Or does the costume simply help Thomas tap into the courage that was already there in his heart, waiting for him? Halloween is this wonderful, magical day when we can be what we always wanted to be. We can transform into anything. Where are our superheroes? Is anybody a superhero today? Stand up. So we have superheroes. Any royalty, any princesses, princes, queens? We had one, I think they just left. Any imaginary creatures? Pokemon, dragons? Ooh, I see some. Favorite animals? I see some animals. Your Pokemon? That's an awesome one. Maybe even people we admire or things that we fear? That's me. Anything that our heart desires. And we are celebrated for our creativity, our boldness, our spookiness, our weirdness, for our willingness to stand out and be seen. Isn't it strange that sometimes it takes wearing a costume to really be seen for who you are? It turns out that Thomas wasn't invisible or alone after all. And when Thomas takes off his mask at the end, he has transformed again into a child that knows he is loved and accepted just as he is. That is the gift of Halloween, a day when we get it right.
Dear friends, thank you for inviting me to First UUAA this morning. It was a long trip to get here, but I think worth it to be able to talk to you about charity. As you may know, I founded the Missionaries of Charity in 1950. Our primary task is to love and care for those persons nobody was prepared to look after. We provide help to the poorest of the poor, those suffering from AIDS, refugees, those struggling with addictions, and those who are unhoused. We do relief work in the wake of natural catastrophes like floods and famines and epidemics. And we do this work all around the world. Now, did you know there is Wi-Fi in heaven? And it is very fast and reliable. And I was looking at your website, and it's really quite nice. If you haven't seen it recently, I highly recommend it. But I saw that once a month, this congregation gives their collection to organizations who do work that is in line with UUAA values. Now, I never had a chance to apply on behalf of the Missionaries of Charity, but that's okay, because I see that this congregation affirms the inherent worth and dignity of all persons, which is truly what I have believed and taught my entire life. Thus, today, I ask you to give as generously as you can to this congregation so that it can carry out its values. Nothing would make me happier than to see this congregation continue to thrive and make a difference in the lives of so many. In my order, we rely on the gifts of others to continue our work, and I'm sure the same is true for you. And when I see this many children present all throughout here, I know that you know the value of raising children with integrity. If for no other reason, give to sustain their spiritual growth and development. I believe this is when the ushers will come forward to receive your generous financial gifts. You may give online at uuaa.org/giving or text UUAA to 73256. Without your gifts, you cannot sustain the good work you have been doing. You have my deepest gratitude for your generosity. Thank you. If you would rise in body or in spirit, and I invite the ushers to come forward, we will dedicate our offering and the gifts you have made so generously to the work of this congregation. If you would join me in saying the words together, to the work of this congregation, which is weaving a tapestry of love and action, we dedicate our lives, and these are offerings. Thank you. And if you would like to remain standing, our magical witch Allison on the keyboard will teach us some new words.
So we all know the song, we know the tune, but now I need your help. Okay, anybody who's a witch or a wizard out there, I need some help. I'm going to conjure some words and have them magically appear on the screen. So I'm going to teach this again, so follow me and follow Mother Teresa. Pumpkin eyes glowing bright. Eyes glowing bright. Bats and other creatures fly through the night.
Everyone,
Bats and other creatures fly through the night. When fear comes, don't despair. When fear comes, don't despair. Have courage knowing that your friends are there. Have courage knowing that your friends are there. Okay, now let's do that all together. Pumpkin eyes glowing bright. Bats and other creatures fly through the night. When fear comes, don't despair. Have courage knowing that your friends are there. Pumpkin eyes glowing bright. Bats and other creatures fly through the night. When fear comes, don't despair. Have courage knowing that your friends are there. Please be seated.
Human beings have some natural responses to threats. Can anyone name the two most common? Fight and flight, right? There are a couple more classic ones. Does anyone know what they might be? And they also start with F. Freeze, and then one more. Fawn, thank you. So when we're faced with something scary or stressful, we react in some very predictable ways. We might think we need to fight to defend ourselves or prove that I'm right and the other side is wrong. Many people opt to flee, running away from the perceived danger. Some of us freeze, not able to say or do anything. And then there are others that fawn. They try to smooth over the problem to avoid conflict. Maybe, just maybe, there's another way. Our next story for all ages this morning, What Was I Scared Of? Written and illustrated by Dr. Seuss. Well, I was walking in the night, and I saw nothing scary, for I have never been afraid of anything, not very. Then I was deep within the woods, when suddenly I spied them. I saw a pair of pale green pants with nobody inside them. I wasn't scared, but yet I stopped. What could those pants be there for? What could a pair of pants at night be standing in the air for? And then they moved. Those empty pants, they kind of started jumping. And then my heart, I must admit, it kind of started thumping. So I got out fast as I could go, sir. I wasn't scared, But pants like that, I did not care for. No, sir. After that, a week went by. Then one dark night in Greenwich, I had to do an errand there and fetch some Greenwich spinach. Well, I had fetched the spinach. I was starting back through town when those pants raced around a corner and they almost knocked me down. I'd lost my Greenwich spinach, but I didn't even care. I ran for home. Believe me, I had really had a scare. Now, bicycles were never made for pale green pants to ride them, especially spooky pale green pants with nobody inside them. And the next night, I was fishing for doubt trout on Ruver River when those pants came rowing toward me. Well, I started in to shiver. And by now I was so frightened that I'll tell you, but I hate to. I screamed and rowed away and lost my hook and line and bait too. I ran and found a brickle bush. I hid myself away. I got brickles in my britches, but I stayed there anyway. I stayed all night. The next night too. I'd be there still, no doubt, but I had to do an errand. So the next night I went out. I had to do an errand, had to pick a peck of snide in a dark and gloomy snide field that was almost 9 miles wide. I said, I do not fear those pants with nobody inside them. I said and said and said those words. I said them, but I lied them. And then I reached inside a snide bush, and the next thing that I knew, I felt my hand touch someone. And I'll bet that you know who. And there I was, caught in the snide, and in that dreadful place, those spooky empty pants and I were standing, face to face. I yelled for help. I screamed, I shrieked, I howled, I yowled, I cried. Oh, save me from these pale green pants with nobody inside. But then a strange thing happened. Why, those pants began to cry. Those pants began to tremble. They were just as scared as I. I had never heard such whimpering, and I began to see that I was just as strange to them as they were strange to me. I put my arm around their waist and sat right down beside them. I calmed them down. Poor empty pants with nobody inside them. And now, we meet quite often, those empty pants and I, and we never shake or tremble. We both smile, and we say, hi. The end. So, there I was, frozen in that new classroom, with all those eyes on me, wondering what was supposed to happen next. Afraid to do or say anything that might draw more attention to myself. I just wanted to slip quietly into my seat and become invisible so they would stop looking at me. Those questions continued to clatter around in my mind. What if no one likes me? What if I don't make any friends? What if I spend every day alone? Those what ifs can be paralyzing. Do you remember those stress responses from earlier? Which one do you think I fell back on that day? Freeze. Yep, I froze. That's definitely my typical response to danger or stress, even now. You know what I didn't consider then, at least not right away? Maybe, just maybe, all of those kids were as afraid as I was. Maybe their minds were also filled with what ifs. Maybe there was a lonely kid sitting in that classroom, wondering if I might become their new best friend. Maybe there was a nervous kid struggling with bullies, worried that I would join in and make their days even harder. Maybe there was a shy kid that had no one to sit with at lunch, that needed someone brave to come to them and hoped maybe it would be me. I couldn't see past my own fears and my own response to those fears. But really, what was I scared of? Just like the main character in our story, terrified of those pants with nobody inside them, I worried that my new classmates would be mean, that they wouldn't like me, that I would be alone. I didn't know them, and yet I assumed that they were a danger or a threat. We make a lot of not so great assumptions about each other, don't we? Why do we so often expect the worst instead of the best? Sometimes people disappoint us. Sometimes we do get our hearts broken, and sometimes we get hurt. If you watch the news and spend any time on social media, it would be very easy to assume that the world is an ugly, harsh place. But there is so much love out there and in here, if only we open our eyes and our hearts to the possibility. Maybe, just maybe, we can lean into empathy. Maybe we can be inspired by this story, and in the midst of this time of upheaval, we can offer grace and love instead of falling back on fear and suspicion. I return again to the wise words of Pastor Steve Garnas-Holmes. Monsters come knocking, open to them. It's dark out there. They're glad to step into the light. Let them in, feed them candy, they'll unmask. Once you compliment them, they're nearly convincing costumes. Learn their names, see their faces. They're not as scary. Besides, they live here. They're your monsters. Befriend your monsters. They're all innocent children, easily wounded, looking for home. Guess what? I did make friends, eventually. I let myself be vulnerable. I decided to open my heart, and others opened their hearts to me. Befriend your monsters. Hug those empty pants with nobody inside them. Lead with compassion. Embrace the innocent children in all of us. Tend to their wounds and give them a home full of love, hope, and peace. May it be so.
Kiddos, which of you has figured out who I am for Halloween? Shout it out. Linus from Charlie Brown and the Great Pumpkin, albeit an aged Asian American version of Linus, but an attempt at Linus. And how many of you have already seen The Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown? Yes, of course. It's iconic. It is part of our culture. We know it by heart for the most part, which is why we're not going to do the whole story word for word, but I will share a shorter version of it, a little summary of The Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown. So we learn in this story as it opens that every Halloween, Linus writes a very important letter to the Great Pumpkin, in which he announces to the Great Pumpkin that he will be keeping vigil this year in a pumpkin patch, because he knows on Halloween night the Great Pumpkin will rise out of a pumpkin patch, and magically flies through the air and has toys for all the children. So in Linus's understanding, this is a Halloween time Santa-like being. And no one believes Linus, except kind of, a little bit. Dear, sweet Sally, who has a crush on him. She agrees to sit in the pumpkin patch with him on Halloween night. And on Halloween, when the day comes, all the kids, Charlie Brown, Lucy, Schroeder, the whole gang, they first go out trick-or-treating, and then they go to a Halloween party. And as they're out and about in their little town, they pass by Linus sitting in the pumpkin patch, twice. And they kind of laugh at him and make a little bit of fun because he's missing out on all the fun and all the trick-or-treating and just sitting in a lonely, now dark, pumpkin patch. Even Sally, his steadfast companion, also starts to get a little bit annoyed, saying, "All right, where is he? Where is the great pumpkin?" At the end of the night, as many of us know, there's no appearance by the great pumpkin, though Snoopy does appear on the scene and surprises and scares both Linus and Sally, dressed in his World War I flying ace aviator costume. But at the end of the day, Linus does not feel let down at all. He says, "Just wait until next year. I'll find the most sincere pumpkin patch and wait there until the great pumpkin appears." And thus ends the story. What a beautiful thing it is to be part of a community where we can celebrate and honor Halloween as this expression of love between strangers and neighbors, some of whom may know one another and some of whom may not know one another at all, just randomly showing up at people's homes and being treated like a beloved guest, getting something sweet for simply showing up as a caring neighbor. What a beautiful thing it is to be in a community where we can honor that spirit of love and community that is a part of Halloween. What a beautiful thing it is that we can honor the reality that fear is a part of our human experience. We know this all too well from the past couple of years, don't we? And we know that the only way to work with fear is to directly face it, to get to know it, to befriend it. It's in that spirit I invite us now into reflecting a little bit on this third story, this story of Linus and the great pumpkin. You know, in revisiting this story this week, I came to a conclusion. It's a fun one. Linus and Sally are amazing Unitarian Universalists. They're fantastic Unitarian Universalists. Now check this out. Linus believes in something absolutely fantastical, transcendent, really big, a really big thing, right? A big concept, a big idea that nobody else really believes in. And guess what? His commitment to the really big thing, by the way, we UUs are committed to a lot of really big ideas, really big, important ideas about what it means to be human. When his friends don't necessarily agree with him, Does he get angry? Does he stomp his feet? Does he yell at them? He doesn't do any of those things, of course not. He doesn't yell at his friends. Is he pushy with them? Does he say, hey, you have to believe this thing that I also believe? You're missing the point. No, he invites them. And when they have a different idea than he does, he's okay with that. Well, I invited them to be with me. They don't want to be with me. That's okay. But look at the steadfastness, this quiet certainty and steadfastness that's a part of his character. He doesn't need anybody else to agree with him. He knows with clarity what is true for him, what's in his heart, what he holds to be true and dear. And he's okay with that. Now, in that quietude and steadfastness and the inviting of his friends, it's almost, he's almost a better UU than even I am on certain days. I mean, isn't it just human to feel anger and frustration and resentment sometimes when you're doing that inviting and people aren't necessarily following you along? Any of us might feel angry or frustrated or resentful. So he kind of shows us or brings alive the best version of Unitarian Universalism that we can be, which is the confidence and certainty in ourselves without needing to push it and force it on anybody else. So he waits in his own certainty with faith, and faith is another word for trust, with faith or trust in a pumpkin patch, in tribute to a grand idea. And look at what happens as he's doing that. Sally, who doesn't necessarily believe what Linus believes, but really, nobody should have to sit in the dark in a pumpkin patch by themselves, right? So she decides to keep him company because she cares about him. This is what we Unitarian Universalists call pastoral care, don't we? Sally's engaged in the work of showing up and caring for somebody she loves. She doesn't necessarily agree with him or believe the same thing he believes. In fact, in showing up without any expectation of that, she's the consummate pastoral care provider. I invite us to hold all of these stories in our hearts, including our friends from the Peanuts gang, Linus and Sally, who can remind us of some of our own commitments as Unitarian Universalists, who we are always striving to be and at our best are.
Rise one more time in body and spirit and join me in singing. You know the tune, you know the words. Now we're going to do it in a round. We'll do it one time in unison and then we'll do the round. Follow Mother Teresa and myself. Pumpkin eyes glowing bright, bats and other creatures fly through the night. When fear comes, don't despair. Have courage knowing that your friends are there. Pumpkin eyes glowing bright, bats and other creatures fly through
Dear ones, remain standing as you're comfortably able. Take a look around this sanctuary and wave from a distance. Say hello to those beloveds who are near you and around you, and also at those cameras where we have other beloveds. You know, about half of our community every week joins us from home or from elsewhere, and so we also wave to you all and include you all in this circle of family and care, this community that is not afraid to be a little silly and have a little fun together, this community that knows so well that the spirit of love is brought alive by each and every one of us through our words and deeds, our action and our presence. Go forth into a new week. Have a happy Halloween. Continue to bring that spirit of love alive in all you do, in all of who you are. Go in love and peace until we are together again.